So basically, I decided to move also into politics within games because to me it is something connected to being a citizen. And I'm not just a game maker, I'm not just a dude. I, in the end, want us in Europe and in my country and so on to be on a positive trajectory. And someone actually has to do the job. And I was always interested in politics. And my mom, my dad always indoctrinated me to a certain degree. So I felt it's kind of my responsibility to also help my community. And especially in games, as a kid already, I told my mom, I'm at one point in time going to win the Nobel Peace Prize for a game. And the point wasn't so much that I win the prize, but to make the point of, games is something to be reckoned with. So I want to make sure also on the political side that this is done in a proper way, right? And people really get it and they also feel the passion. And to be also very straightforward, that it's not just a business, right? To me, it's very important that everybody understands that games are part of culture. It's the culture technique of the century. And on the political level, and especially in Europe, which can be a bit abstract, to be honest, it's very important that someone needs to take care of it, and in this case, the someone is me. So what makes Europe special in regards to gaming and the gaming industry is that Europe has a very old history on all matters of culture, right? We are not just one nation or one identity, we are many. And there's been so much great culture being produced out of Europe over thousands of years actually, and that is a big opportunity and a great fundus basically of lots of different perspectives. And me being here, for example, in Serbia, they have their own history and their own where they would go, and you have certain challenges, how much with the East, with the West. So there's also some friction, and friction is good for culture, right? It's better when people have strong opinions and passion and they bring it to the table. So in my opinion, the great advantage and the interesting part in Europe is the diversity. And on the other hand, I'm so glad that for most part we are now living in a much more peaceful environment, right? So having that peace, the diversity, this interconnectedness, me being here, we can travel, we can exchange point of views. Where else is that possible, right? Of course, Asia has much more people, but it's more difficult for them. They have less freedom of speech and so on, and many other points on the political side. So I think Europe has a great setup for game developers to either make money and/or express themselves artistically or even politically. So I have a very, very positive idea of the future of European games. This is when you start talking to politicians in Brussels and, how does a, more technocratic setup like Brussels react to something? Yeah, let's make games, right? We're a little bit more punk-ass in a way, right? Using technology and producing culture at the same time. That's not easy, right? And my take on it, I do it and try to do it in an authentic way. I have a discussion with them dressed like this. I do not dress up. I don't try to be someone else. I try to be as much as who I am, really. And that always helps because people get that I'm serious and I'm not just a lobbyist. I'm a game maker myself. And that is very, very important. And on the other hand, to explain, especially also on the more intellectual side, why games are culture and why it's interesting and why it can influence, I think is something which even resonates. And I talk to so many different peoples, right? Right-wingers, left-wingers, no-wingers, this is, and I can jump through the different points. So once I explain to a more right-wing hawkish politician how games can be used for the army, and so on. So in my opinion, and that's the great thing about games can be used for everything. We have a growing responsibility, in my opinion, to do the right things, to be honest, because, you can also go down really dark paths, and, there have been in our community Gamergate, it's not a shiny example of what we can do. It's a really dark area, to be honest, but it's obvious that it's happening and we have to take care of it. And last but not least, politicians do understand that now it's millions of people playing, and basically everybody's playing, that it's an economic factor, and when people, many years ago, a World Cup, and so a French guy scores a goal and he does a Fortnite dance, right? And the moment, even more boring politicians watch football, right? And if they realize they don't get it anymore, they understand that maybe it's time to look at this a bit better. So what are the positive impacts on gaming? I think they're manifold, right? One of the first things scientists found out is hand-eye coordination, right? If I can use the joystick well and on the screen and all that. Why is that necessary? Why is that important? People realize that, for example, training for the military, people who played games before have a better kind of concentration. There were examples that levels of concentrations are similar to astronauts. So this is something obvious. I, for myself, couldn't have built a company. I studied philosophy and political science. Now I run, a multinational company and with a couple hundred people and so on. How could I do that? I played a lot of strategy games, so I basically really dived into decision-making processes. On the other hand, there's a great book about how basically gaming changes the economy, because every gamer learns to stand up when they fail. That's awesome, right? We need innovation. We need people to find new companies, to do startups. And even if they fail, that they don't feel miserable and jump out the window, but, that they continue and do it again. So there's so many different levels. We use games in medical sites, for people to be trained. There was, more than 10 years ago, this very famous project where kids played games to understand better which medication they should do when they have cancer. So there were studies on that, so that they were taking more of their pills, so the recovery rate was a little bit higher. It's not that gaming saves the world like this. That's very naive, right? But it can basically improve the human condition overall, and it can do it also individually. And I think this is very positive. At the same time, of course, we have to look at challenges, and you can play too much and so on. I always call it fascination, because in regards to addiction, that's debatable, right? Also from the medical point of view. But in the end, it's kind of opening your mind also in the sense of, you're not just one single person here, maybe in Belgrade in Serbia, but you connect to everybody in the world. That gives you this kind of togetherness, makes you more a global citizen, which, leads to less wars, because, if you played with these people before, why would you kill them, right? So there's so many different layers of how games are actually shaping what you call the culture code more and more. I always advocate to be aware of it, be conscious about it, and try to do the right thing and the good thing. Talking about the trends in gaming, I'm quite glad that I don't really understand it fully anymore. And what does it mean is, a couple of years ago, I basically played all relevant games. I knew what was coming out. I could anticipate the next big trend with, 90% probability and so on. And we are now at this maturity state of this great medium that nobody can do that anymore. So if we talk about certain things like VR, AR, or NFT and all that, there's lots of stuff happening. That's great. But it's so many at the same time that we will also still be surprised that from this country something pops up which is fresh and new, and nobody would have thought this would happen. So it's like, I think the biggest trend, and that's the most important thing, that the market is growing and growing and growing. And that means there's more people from all ways of life being interested in making games, which creates more innovation, which creates more interesting titles. I'm really happy that, especially the last couple of years, there's more, art house. We're sitting here in the film museum, so that was very important also in the movies, right? To recognize that there's always really the artistic drive and intent, and not just the commercial. And so it is definitely one of the trends that, sure, you should make money in games because you have to support a living, but there's more and more ways also to just be an artist first because of the public subsidies, public support, other game makers who sold their companies for billions nowadays, right? And supporting people and all that. So I'm very, very bullish on the economic sense, but I'm also very excited as a gamer myself to see always new games and whatever platform. And personally, if you think about the metaverse discussion right now, which is, as we know, who are a little bit more into this, it's not really a new one, right? The metaverse and Snow Crash is kind of coined, 30 years ago. So there's stuff which is going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to disrupt the world in, anytime soon, but this kind of interconnectedness and these different experiences where you can go from one to the other, I think is something I'm looking forward to. And if you talk about VR and the input devices, to be honest, I think we're not really there yet. The moment that we plug in, I think we're decades away from that. And these kind of neuromancers ideas about the future. But sooner or later, stuff like this will happen. And I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So it's still on record, or?
Well, yeah.
So talking about me being a gamer, right? You know, some people joke I have this huge library on Steam, which I do. It's like 2,500 games, I guess now. My finish rate is not so high, but my played the game rate is I think 45% of those. I think I played roughly 5,000 games in my life so far. I started playing games when I was 4. I'm 45 in 2 months. And I had enough time to play many games, and I will also for my second half of my life play those games. You know, I don't think I would still make games or advocate for games if I wouldn't enjoy them anymore. Obviously, you know, not every game kind of, you know, triggers me to go super crazy in, because I saw a lot, right? And sometimes I just play a game for 30 minutes to say, okay, this is like this, and you know, I can basically in my brain categorize it and put it in boxes and all that. That's in some cases enough for me, but I still finish games. You know, I'm just about to finish Horizon. I think I'm gonna, you know, platinum it, so 100%. That's the plan. So I still finish games on a regular basis, but I also play a lot of different ones, and sometimes I, you know, watch some streamers do it. You know.